Good morning, guys. Yesterday we were looking at participles. So the proper name is past participle, but I just call them participles because the present participle I call gerunds to avoid confusion. So just call it a participle. The abbreviation I use is PTC. When you see PTC, that means participle. In Spanish, they end. We recognize them by the endings ado for an AR verb, ido for an ER or IR verb. Then there are some irregular participles. We'll see them later. Don't worry about them. Right now, you're just going to look for ado, ido, and you're like, participle. I recognize it. The participles are one of the three unconjugated forms. The other two are infinitives and gerunds. We saw them in Spanish 1. And now we're finally seeing the third, final unconjugated form. This is important because you never put a pronoun in front, an object pronoun or reflex pronoun in front of an unconjugated form. You always put it in front of a conjugated form of the verb, so this is not going to be in front of. Now, yesterday we were looking at how participles get used as adjectives, and this is actually the minor use of participles, like about 10% of the time. It's kind of, they choose the minor use because it's kind of an easy way to ease into the subject. So you look at one thing at a time and you build your concepts. So anyhow, so when they're used as an adjective, they change in gender and number according to the noun that they're describing. Remember, adjectives describe nouns, right? So for example, we have the sentence here, el alumno está aburrido. Here's my participle that's working like an adjective, and it's describing the noun alumno. So the student is bored, okay? So I see my E-I-D-O and I say, it's a participle. I read the rest of the sentence and I'm like, okay, this participle is being used as an adjective, is describing the noun alumno. Alumno means student, right? And so the noun is singular, masculine. You see that O, that tells you it's masculine. You don't see an S, so you're like, oh, okay, singular. So my participle is going to be singular masculine also. It's going to end in an O, and it's not going to have an S. So this is important because I didn't put other examples on the board, but it was part of your homework yesterday, where you actually change this to an A, aburrida, if it's a girl, and you pluralize it if it's more than one. Los alumnos están aburridos. You're going to pluralize it. This changing of gender and number only happens when the participles are being used as adjectives. Only when they're being used as adjectives. So that was yesterday's lesson, and I'm just reviewing it, okay? So today, we're going to see the major use of the participle. The major use of the participle is for the perfect tense. Now, when we look at perfect tense, you're not going to pluralize it or masculine feminize it. You're just going to leave that participle untouched. It's always going to be ado, ido, okay, for the perfect tense. Now, the perfect tense is one of our 4 past tenses. Remember, we've learned the preterite, the imperfect, and now we're going to learn the perfect, okay? And then later we'll learn the past perfect. So, but we're on number 3, the perfect tense. Now, the perfect tense, the first thing I want to say about the perfect tense is that there's nothing perfect about it. It's not like, oh, that's just the perfect type of past tense. I just love it. Nonsense. There's nothing perfect about it. It's a completely arbitrary name that grammarians use because they're weird. Grammarians are weird, and so they put these weird names that nobody else understands. They have some idea in their mind. There's nothing perfect about it. It's just an arbitrary name. The other thing I want to say about the perfect tense is that your book calls it the present perfect tense. Here, let me write that on the board. Your book says present perfect, and I just absolutely hate this because it's very confusing, because it's not present tense. It's a past tense. So why are they calling it the present perfect tense? Like I said, grammarians, they're crazy. They do stupid things. So just forget about, when your book says present, just like scratch it out and just learn this. Call it the perfect tense. It's much easier, okay? So it's the perfect tense. Now, the perfect tense is a compound tense. In other words, there are 2 verb forms that work together. 1, 2. Like a bicycle built for 2. The 2 are together, okay? So this example in English, I have studied. So the first verb form is an antecedent, and the second verb form is a complement. Now, some of you might be saying, but I thought this was a helping verb. Yeah, that's another name for it. It's also called a helping verb, or it can be called an antecedent. So the antecedent goes antes. So remember in Spanish, antes means before. And then the complement completes the idea, the message. So maybe you can associate the word complement with completing. And so you have the before part, and then you have the completing part. So the antecedent and the complement. Did I say this is a compound tense, right? You maybe know it as a verb phrase. Yes, it's also called a verb phrase. I'm not going to be calling it a verb phrase. I'm going to be calling it a compound tense. So in English, the formula for the perfect tense, here we have an example. The formula is either use have or you use has, and you combine it with the participle. So how's the participle come in English? It's either ed or en. That's the participle in English. And so have is your helping verb or your antecedent, and has gets used with third person singular. He has studied as opposed to I have studied. And so that's the perfect tense. Now, this is what we got to learn. In Spanish, the antecedent is these forms. Okay, so we already know that in Spanish you have really 6 conjugations, but we always skip the fifth one, right? And we just put up 5. So here they are. This is has, hemos, on. By the way, if anybody pronounces the H, I'm going to gong you from Pakistan. So don't do that. So this is yo I have. Tu has, you have. Él ha, he has. Nosotros hemos, we have. Ellos han, they have. And then you're going to do your participle. And the endings of the participle in Spanish are ado or ido. So let's look at an example. Okay, this is from your book. The book says, has comido mucho. I'm on page 212. So you need to be on page 212. And you look at the sentences there. ¿Has comido mucho? ¿Has comido mucho? So, has gets translated have, and the has part, the s, tells you that it's you. Have you. Comido is our participle in Spanish. We recognize it because the participle ends in ido, if it's an er verb. Comer is an er verb. And that gets translated into a participle that has en in English, eaten. Have you eaten mucho? A lot. Have you eaten a lot? ¿Has comido mucho? All right, very good. So verb form number 1, antecedent, has. Verb form number 2, complement, comido. Has comido mucho. Okay, I'm out of space on the board, so I'm just going to read the sentences that are here. So it says, no he comido mucho. So that means, no, I haven't eaten a lot. Okay. Next question. Ha pedido la cuenta. So it's third person singular. Has he asked for? Remember, pedir is to ask for. La cuenta. La cuenta is the bill. That's the bill at the restaurant. ¿Has pedido la cuenta? No. Él no la ha pedido. He has not asked for it. The word la is our object pronoun, right? And it goes before the conjugated form. The conjugated form, the PTC is not conjugated, so it doesn't go in front of that. It goes in front of the conjugated form. That's our rule. Él no lo ha pedido. No, he hasn't asked for that. Okay? All right, let's look at the activities. Activity 1, the doctor is asking Daniel a bunch of questions as if you were examining him. So he says, according to the model, ¿Qué has comido hoy, Daniel? What have you eaten today, Daniel? Question number 2 is tener dolor de cabeza. Dolor de cabeza question number 1. Question number 1 is dolor de cabeza is a headache. It's literally a pain. Dolor is pain, and cabeza is your head. So pain in your head, otherwise known as a headache in English. So it'd be, ¿Has tenido dolor de cabeza hoy, Daniel? And so you form the question, okay? Yes, so I think hopefully that will be enough for activity 1. Now in activity 2, you're going to ask a question and give an answer. So according to the modelo, you're going to say, ¿Has tenido un examen esta semana? So that means, have you had an exam this week? And so the student answered, yes, I've had an exam in literature. Sí, he tenido un examen en literatura. Okay? And then we have a couple more sentences here on page 213. 213, we have these sentences. I'll go over these sentences. Jorge ha tenido un accidente. And I don't need to translate that for you because it says right there what the translation is. So, ha tenido in boldface is your perfect tense. It's the compound tense. It has the antecedent complement, ha tenido. Okay? And then the next sentence, hemos llegado al hospital. We have arrived at the hospital. Okay? Hemos llegado in boldface. That's the perfect tense. Activity 3, you're making sentences. And you have to use a perfect tense in your sentences. If you don't use a perfect tense, you're going to get like 40 points off. So please, with your 8 sentences you do there, don't just do any kind of sentence that makes sense. You have to use the perfect tense, okay? All right, that's it for today's lesson. I'll catch you guys next time. I really am missing you. I'm over there in Pakistan now, but I'm thinking about you guys because I love you guys, and see you soon.